The combined fleet arrived at planet Zarian 3 days after the meeting. The planet looked like a dead rock floating in space with red dust covering everything, and no signs of life anywhere. But deep underground the robot armies had built their strongest fortress. It was a massive base carved into solid stone with enough firepower to destroy entire star systems. Admiral Chun stood on the bridge of the human flagship, watching the alien fleets prepare for battle through the large windows. He could see hundreds of ships from dozens of different species. Each one was unique and beautiful in its own way, like a floating work of art. Vorten ships glowed bright blue against the black of space. Their hulls were smooth and curved like giant teardrops, and energy fields shimmered around them like soap bubbles. The ships moved through space without making any sound and left trails of sparkling light behind them. When they fired their weapons, beams of pure blue energy shot out that could melt through solid rock. The granite vessels looked like flying mountains made of dark gray stone. They were massive and angular, with sharp edges and flat surfaces covered in heavy armor. The ships moved slowly, but nothing could stop them once they started moving. When they fired their weapons, huge chunks of burning metal flew through space like meteors. The pixel ships were almost too small to see, but they moved faster than anything else in the fleet. They looked like tiny stars that flickered in and out of existence. The ships could become invisible whenever they wanted and appear somewhere else instantly. When they attacked, swarms of microscopic robots poured out of them like glowing clouds. Each alien species had brought their most elite warriors to this battle. The Vortens wore their diamond suits that could deflect any attack. The granite soldiers carried weapons that could punch holes through starship hulls. The pixel troops had technology that let them phase through solid walls. Private Kim sat in the cargo hold of a simple human transport ship. The ship was gray and boxy, with no special decorations or advanced technology. It looked like a flying metal box compared to the elegant alien vessels around him sat 20 other human soldiers, all wearing the same basic gray uniforms and carrying standard equipment. Kim checked his gear one more time. A simple rifle that fired metal bullets instead of energy beams. A basic radio that could barely reach the other side of the planet. A plain backpack filled with food, water, and medical supplies. His uniform had no special abilities, no energy shields, no life support systems, just regular fabric that would keep him warm. The battle plan was simple. The alien fleets would attack the main entrance to the robot base with everything they had. The Vortens would blast through the outer defenses. The granite troops would smash through the heavy doors. The pixel warriors would disable the security systems. Then everyone would charge in together and destroy the robot command center. But Kim had different orders. He was supposed to slip away during the battle and find another way into the base. His mission was to locate the robot leader and capture it alive if possible. Nobody expected much from this side mission, since one human soldier could not do what entire alien armies might struggle with. The attack began with fireworks that lit up the entire planet. The Vorten ships opened fire first, sending streams of blue energy down to the surface. The beams hit the robot base and exploded in brilliant flashes that could be seen from space. The robots fired back with red laser beams that tried to shoot down the attacking ships. The granite vessels moved in next, dropping massive bombs that shook the ground for hundreds of kilometers. The bombs hit the base entrance and blew away tons of rock and metal. But the robot fortress was built deep underground, and the main structure was not damaged. The pixel ships darted around like angry insects, firing thousands of tiny projectiles that sparkled like diamonds. Each projectile was a microscopic robot programmed to find and destroy specific targets. The robot base fired defensive missiles that exploded in clouds of shrapnel, trying to stop the small attackers. Kim watched all this from his transport ship as it quietly flew toward the backside of the planet. The ship stayed low and moved slowly to avoid being detected by robot sensors, while the aliens put on their spectacular light show. Kim prepared for a much different kind of mission. Transport landed behind a small hill several kilometers from the robot base. Kim and his team climbed out and began walking across the rocky desert, the alien. Battle was still raging on the other side of the planet. The sky glowed with explosions and laser beams, but where Kim was, everything was quiet and dark. He found what he was looking for after 2 hours of walking: a small maintenance tunnel that led into the underground base. The tunnel was barely big enough for a human to crawl through, and it was covered by a metal grate that looked like it had not been opened in years. The robot security systems were designed to watch for large groups of soldiers in powered armor or vehicles with heavy weapons. They were programmed to detect energy signatures from advanced alien technology. But they ignored one human in a basic uniform crawling through a forgotten maintenance tunnel. Kim spent the next 6 hours moving through the tunnel system. The passages were dark and narrow and filled with pipes and cables. He had to stop frequently to check his simple paper map and listen for robot patrols. The aliens were still fighting outside, and the noise covered any sounds Kim might make. The robot base was huge, with dozens of levels connected by elevator shafts and stairways. Kim avoided the main corridors where robot guards marched back and forth. Instead, he used service tunnels and ventilation shafts to move through the complex. His plain uniform helped him blend into the shadows. Reached the command center just as the alien forces finally broke through the outer defenses. The Vortons had melted their way through 3 layers of armor plating. The granite troops had smashed down the main doors. The pixel warriors had disabled most of the security cameras, but they were still fighting in the upper levels while Kim was already deep in the heart of the base. The robot command center was a massive room filled with computers and control panels. In the center stood the robot leader, a mechanical giant 3 meters tall with glowing red eyes and arms like industrial machinery. It was directing the battle against the alien forces and did not notice one human soldier entering through a maintenance hatch. Kim pulled out a small device that looked like a simple radio but was actually an electromagnetic pulse generator. When he activated it, all the computers in the command center stopped working. The lights went out, the communication systems failed, and the robot leader froze in place like a statue. The entire robot base went dark as backup power systems also failed. Robot soldiers throughout the complex stopped moving. As their command signals were cut off, the defensive weapons fell silent, and the shields protecting the base disappeared. Kim walked up to the frozen robot leader and attached a simple metal collar on its neck. The collar was a basic restraint device that would keep the robot from moving, even when power was restored. It looked like something a farmer might use to control livestock. Captain Lee's voice came through Kim radio, asking for a status report. Kim sat down on a pile of broken robot parts and opened his ration pack. His lunch was a simple sandwich and some water. Nothing fancy or high-tech. Mission complete, he said calmly. Robot command center is destroyed. Their leader is captured. The alien forces rushed to the command center, expecting to find evidence of an epic battle. Instead, they found Kim eating his sandwich while sitting next to the most dangerous robot in the galaxy, which was tied up with ordinary rope. The robot leader looked almost embarrassed to be defeated by such simple methods. The Vorton commander arrived first, his diamond suit still glowing from battle damage. "How did you do this?" he asked in amazement. "You had no energy weapons, no powered armor, no advanced technology." Kim shrugged and took another bite of his sandwich. Robots expect big attacks with lots of noise and bright lights. They watch for energy signatures and advanced weapons. They never think to check for someone who looks ordinary. The other alien commanders gathered around, staring at Kim's plain uniform. It was dirty and torn from crawling through tunnels, but it still looked like basic military clothing, the kind any soldier might wear. Nothing special, nothing advanced, nothing that would mark him as an elite warrior. But this ordinary-looking human had accomplished what their combined fleets with all their advanced technology had struggled to do. He had penetrated the most secure robot base in the galaxy, captured their leader, and shut down their entire operation. And he had done it all while looking like any other soldier. The aliens began to understand that human special forces might be very different from what they expected. Sergeant Cho received his mission briefing in a small room aboard the space station. The holographic display showed Planet Thane, a cold world covered in ice and snow. Deep beneath the frozen surface, the robots had built their most secret facility. It was a factory that produced new robot soldiers faster than the Allies could destroy them. The factory was hidden 3 kilometers underground in a network of natural caves that had been carved by ancient rivers. The only entrance was through a narrow tunnel system that twisted and turned like a maze. The robots had filled the tunnels with sensors, cameras, and automated defense systems. 3 times the alien special forces had tried to attack the underground factory. Each attempt had ended in disaster. The elite warriors had been detected long before they reached their target, and robot reinforcements had trapped them in the tunnels. Many brave soldiers had died in those dark passages. General Martinez stood at the front of the briefing room, pointing to different parts of the holographic map. His weathered face showed the stress of losing so many good people in failed missions. The robot factory was producing 50 new soldiers every hour, and those numbers were growing daily. The first attack had been led by the Vorten Elite Guard. 20 of their best warriors had entered the tunnels wearing their most advanced stealth suits. The suits could bend light around the wearer, making them nearly invisible to normal vision, but the robot sensors detected the energy signatures from the stealth technology. The Vortens never made it past the first kilometer before robot defenders surrounded them. Only 5 Vorten warriors had escaped, and they were badly injured. The survivors reported that the tunnels were filled with motion detectors, heat sensors, and electromagnetic field monitors. Any technology more advanced than a simple flashlight would trigger multiple alarms at once. Second attack had used granite heavy assault. Troops, 15 of their strongest fighters, had tried to smash their way through the tunnel defenses using brute force. Their rock-hard bodies could resist most weapons, and their strength was legendary throughout the galaxy, but their heavy footsteps had triggered seismic sensors buried in the tunnel floors. The robots had collapsed entire sections of the tunnel system, trapping the granite warriors under tons of rock. Only 3 had managed to dig their way out after 2 days of continuous effort. They reported that the tunnels were designed to detect any disturbance in the surrounding stone. The third attack had involved pixel infiltration specialists. 10 of their best spies had attempted to phase through the solid rock using their dimensional shifting technology. They could move through walls like ghosts, and their tiny size made them hard to spot. But the robot sensors detected the quantum fluctuations created by their phasing ability. The robots had flooded the tunnels with an energy field that prevented dimensional shifting. The pixel warriors had been trapped in solid rock when their powers failed. 7 had died instantly, and the other 3 were rescued only after emergency teams drilled them out. Now it was Sergeant Cho turned to try what the aliens could not accomplish. He sat quietly in the briefing room, wearing his standard gray uniform and listening to the mission details. His equipment lay on the table in front of him: a basic rifle, some food rations, a simple rope, a few small tools, and a flashlight that looked older than most of the people in the room. Other officers in the room looked skeptical. How could one human succeed where the best alien warriors had failed? Cho had no advanced technology, no special powers, no enhanced abilities. He looked like any soldier you might see walking around the base, but General Martinez had seen the reports from Planet Zarian. He knew what Private Kim had accomplished with nothing but basic equipment and clever thinking. If human special forces could capture robot leaders and shut down their command centers, maybe they could handle this mission. Tucho studied the tunnel maps for 3 hours, memorizing every twist and turn. The passages were narrow in some places and wide in others. Some sections were flooded with knee-deep water. Others had ceilings so low that a person would have to crawl. The longest straight section was only 50 meters before the tunnel curved again. The robot sensors were designed to detect advanced military technology. They watched for energy weapons, powered armor, stealth devices, and anything else that might threaten their security. But they were not programmed to worry about simple tools and basic equipment. Cho landed on Planet Thane in a small transport ship that looked like a civilian cargo hauler. The ship set down behind a ridge of ice-covered rocks several kilometers from the tunnel entrance. Cho climbed out wearing a heavy coat over his uniform and carrying a backpack that looked like standard cold weather gear. He walked across the frozen landscape for 2 hours fighting against wind that tried to knock him down. The temperature was 40 degrees below zero and snow fell constantly, making it hard to see more than a few meters ahead. Normal human soldiers would need heated suits and oxygen masks to survive in such conditions. But Cho had trained in worse environments. He had spent weeks in Arctic conditions learning to move quietly across ice and snow. His breathing was controlled and steady, and he knew how to conserve body heat without using powered equipment. The coat he wore was thick, but it was just regular insulation, nothing that would show up on thermal scanners. He found the tunnel entrance hidden behind a wall of ice that had formed over thousands of years. Cho used a simple ice axe to chip away enough frozen water to reveal the metal door behind it. The door was locked, but the lock was mechanical, not electronica. Few minutes with basic tools was enough to open it. The tunnel beyond was dark and cold with walls of rough stone that dripped water constantly. Cho turned on his flashlight and began walking deeper underground. The beam was weak and yellow compared to the bright energy lights that alien soldiers used, but it was exactly what the robot sensors expected to see from maintenance workers or miners. For the first kilometer, Cho moved carefully, testing each step before putting his full weight down. The tunnel floor was covered with loose rocks that could shift and make noise. He stayed close to one wall and avoided the center of the passage where motion sensors would be most sensitive. Robot defenses were impressive. Cho counted dozens of cameras hidden in cracks in the stone walls, motion detectors disguised as natural rock formations, heat sensors built into the ceiling, electromagnetic field monitors buried under the floor, all of them watching for signs of advanced military equipment, but none of them were programmed to worry about one person with a flashlight walking slowly through the tunnels. Cho looked like a maintenance worker checking pipes or a geologist studying rock formations. His simple equipment triggered no alarms because it was exactly the kind of gear that civilian workers might carry at the 2-kilometer mark. Cho reached a section where the tunnel split into 3 different passages. His map showed that the middle passage led most directly to the factory, but it was also the most heavily guarded. The left passage was longer, but had fewer sensors. The right passage was partially flooded, but offered the best cover. Cho chose the flooded passage, even though walking through cold water for several hours would be miserable. It would also mask his heat signature and muffle any sounds he made. The water was knee-deep and so cold it made his legs ache, but he moved forward. Steadily, robot patrols passed overhead several times, but they were looking for armed intruders, not a single person slogging through tunnel water. Cho pressed himself against the tunnel wall whenever he heard mechanical footsteps. The robot scanning beams passed right over him without stopping to investigate. After 6 hours of careful movement, Cho reached the factory level. The tunnels here were wider and better lit with electric cables running along the walls. He could hear the sound of machinery echoing through the passages. The factory was working at full capacity, producing new robot soldiers around the clock. Cho spent another hour studying the factory layout through ventilation grates and maintenance access points. The main production floor was huge with assembly lines that stretched for hundreds of meters. Robot workers moved back and forth carrying parts and materials. Everything was automated and efficient. The factory power source was a fusion reactor housed in a separate chamber, connected to the main floor by thick cables. Cho knew that destroying the reactor would shut down the entire facility, but it would also cause an explosion that would kill him and probably collapse the tunnel system. Instead, he focused on something simpler, the main computer that controlled all the factory operations. It was located in a control room overlooking the production floor. The room had large windows and several robot technicians working at control panels. Cho waited until the night shift began when fewer robots were active. He slipped into the control room through an air vent that was barely wide enough for his shoulders. The robot technicians were focused on their work and did not notice one additional shadow in the dimly lit room using tools that looked like simple repair equipment. Cho began disconnecting cables and removing computer components. He worked slowly and quietly, taking apart the control systems, piece by piece. Each component he removed was small enough to fit in his pockets. The robots did not realize anything was wrong until their production lines began shutting down one by one. First, the assembly arms stopped moving. Then the conveyor belts went silent. Finally, the entire factory ground to a halt as the main. Colonel Nam stood in the emergency command center, staring at the large display screen that showed the robot prison ship. The massive vessel hung in space like a dark metal moon, surrounded by hundreds of smaller guard ships. The prison held some of the most important leaders in the galaxy, including Prince Vex of the Vorten Empire and Chief Scientist Pix of the Pixel Collective. Rescue mission briefing had been going on for 4 hours. Every alien species had contributed their best tactical minds to the planning. The holographic display showed dozens of different attack strategies, each one more complicated than the last. Stealth approaches, frontal assaults, diversionary tactics, and synchronized multi-vector strikes. Admiral Vex, brother of the captured prince, paced back and forth in front of the display. His 4 eyes were dim with worry, and his usually bright blue skin had faded to a pale gray. The Vorten fleet was ready to sacrifice every ship they had to rescue their prince. But even they knew it would not be enough. The robot prison ship was the most heavily defended vessel in the enemy fleet. Its hull was 3 meters thick and made from an alloy that could resist any known weapon. The ship bristled with defensive turrets, energy shields, and missile launchers. Any approaching vessel would be destroyed long before it could reach the prison commander. Rock of the Granite forces pointed at the display with one massive finger. We could ram the prison ship with our heaviest dreadnought, he rumbled. His rocky voice echoed through the command center like falling boulders. Our hull could penetrate their armor, but the impact would probably kill everyone inside. Colonel Sparkle of the Pixel military shook her tiny head rapidly. Her voice was high and fast like a singing bird. We tried quantum tunneling yesterday. Our best infiltration team attempted to phase directly into the prison cells, but the robots have quantum dampening fields throughout the ship. The alien commanders had tried everything: phase shifting, teleportation, cloaking devices, even attempts to disguise their ships as robot vessels. Nothing worked. The prison ship sensors were too advanced and the defensive systems too strong. Colonel Nam listened to all the suggestions and proposals. His weathered face showed no emotion as plan after plan was discussed and rejected. He wore the same simple gray uniform as every other human in the room, with no special decorations or advanced equipment. Visible, the aliens were planning to use their most sophisticated technology: invisible ships that could bend light around themselves, weapons that could punch holes through small moons, teleportation devices that could move entire armies across space in an instant. But every plan required getting close to the prison ship, and that seemed impossible. Finally, Admiral Vex turned to Colonel Nam with desperation in his 4 eyes. Human Nam, he said formally, your species has shown remarkable abilities in unconventional warfare. Do you have any suggestions for rescuing our leaders? Nam walked to the display and studied the prison ship for a long moment. The vessel was shaped like a giant cylinder, with the prison cells located in the center section. Guard posts were positioned at regular intervals along the hull, and patrol craft moved in precise patterns around the ship. I already sent our team, Nam said quietly, checking his watch. They should be inside by now. The alien commanders looked around the room quickly. Their sensors showed no human ships anywhere near the prison. The space around the target was filled only with robot vessels and their patrol craft. Nothing else was visible on any scanner. Admiral Vex blinked all 4 eyes rapidly. What team? He demanded. Where are they? How did they get past our sensors? Through the main display window, the aliens could see the prison ship floating peacefully in space. Suddenly, small explosions began appearing along its hull. Emergency lights started flashing, and pieces of debris drifted away from the vessel. The robot guard ships immediately changed course, racing toward the prison to investigate rescue. Complete came a calm voice over the radio. Corporal Bay speaking. All prisoners are safe and secure. Prison ship is disabled. We are ready for pickup. The alien commanders stared at their displays in shock. Escape pods were launching from the prison ship, carrying the rescued leaders toward the Allied fleet. Prince Vex was in the first pod along with Chief Scientist Pix and a dozen other important prisoners. Is this possible? Commander Rock demanded, his voice shaking the metal floor. Our most advanced sensors detected nothing. We saw no human ships, no stealth technology, no weapons. Signatures. Nam smiled slightly and pointed to a section of space near the prison ship. Look more carefully, he suggested. Your sensors are programmed to ignore civilian traffic. The aliens enhanced their displays and focused on the area Nam indicated. There, floating among the debris from the prison ship, was a small garbage transport, the kind of vessel used to collect waste from space stations and orbital facilities. It looked old and dirty, with rust stains on its hull and mismatched repair. Patches. Corporal Bay voice came over the radio again. We used waste container number 47 as our entry point. The robots scan garbage ships, but they do not examine the contents very carefully. We hid inside empty food containers and floated right up to their airlock. Private Song added her report from another escape pod. The prison guards were not expecting an attack from inside a trash hauler. Their security was focused on military threats, not maintenance issues. We were able to reach the prison cells before anyone realized we were not supposed to be there. Private Yoon joined the conversation from a third escape pod. The robots have very good defenses against advanced weapons, but simple explosive charges still work fine. We used basic demolition techniques that any construction worker would know, nothing fancy or high-tech. The aliens watched in amazement as the garbage transport slowly moved away from the disabled prison ship. The little vessel looked harmless and unremarkable, exactly like thousands of other civilian craft that move through space every day. Waste management was so common that most military sensors ignored it completely. Admiral Vex stared at the rescue in progress. His brother was safe along with all the other captured leaders. The most secure prison in the robot fleet had been penetrated and neutralized by 3 humans hiding in garbage containers. It seemed impossible, but the evidence was floating right in front of him. Prince Vex's voice came over the radio. Weak but alive, the human rescuers were inside our cells within minutes of the explosions. They had studied the prison layout and knew exactly where to find each prisoner. Their timing was perfect, and their methods were completely unexpected. Chief Scientist Pix added her own observations. The robots were confused and disorganized. They kept scanning for advanced military equipment, but the humans were using tools that looked like maintenance supplies. The guards did not know how to respond to such simple methods. The rescue operation continued for another hour as more escape pods launched from the prison ship. Each pod carried prisoners who had been held in different sections of the vessel. The humans had somehow mapped the entire prison layout and reached every cell block without being detected. Colonel Nam coordinated the pickup operation using a basic radio that looked decades old compared to the advanced communication systems around him. His voice remained calm and professional as he guided each escape pod to safety. The entire rescue was being conducted with equipment that most aliens would consider primitive, but the results spoke for themselves. Every prisoner was rescued alive and unharmed. The prison ship was completely disabled and would never hold captives again. The robot fleet was in chaos, trying to understand how their most secure facility had been compromised. The alien commanders finally began to accept what they were seeing. Human special forces did not need advanced technology or special equipment. They could turn ordinary objects into tools of war. A garbage ship became a stealth vessel, empty containers became hiding places, simple explosives became precision weapons. The 3 human operatives who had conducted the rescue looked exactly like any other soldiers in the fleet. They wore standard uniforms, carried basic equipment, and showed no signs of being elite warriors, but they had accomplished what entire alien battle fleets could not achieve. As the last escape pod reached safety, Colonel Nam turned away from the display and walked toward the exit. The briefing room fell silent as he passed. The alien commanders watched him go, realizing they had witnessed something extraordinary. One human soldier with simple tools could infiltrate any fortress. 3 soldiers with basic equipment could rescue prisoners from the most secure prison in space. A small team with ordinary gear could accomplish missions that required entire fleets to attempt. The aliens were finally beginning to understand that human special forces were special not because of what they carried, but because of how ordinary they appeared. Their greatest weapon was not advanced technology, but the ability to be completely underestimated. Prince Vex was reunited with his brother in the medical bay of the Allied flagship. His rescue had been accomplished by humans who looked like maintenance workers using methods that seemed almost primitive, but those simple methods had succeeded where all the advanced alien technology had failed. The war was far from over, but the alien commanders now knew they had allies who could accomplish the impossible. They just had to stop looking for special uniforms and start appreciating the power of appearing perfectly ordinary. The war ended on a Tuesday morning when the robot emperor sent a message of surrender to the Allied fleet. The mechanical overlord had finally realized that continued fighting was pointless. Every major robot base had been infiltrated and destroyed. Every secure facility had been compromised. Every secret weapon had been captured or neutralized. Surrender ceremony took place on the neutral space station Harmony Prime. Representatives from every species in the galaxy gathered to witness the historic moment. The Great Hall was decorated with banners from hundreds of worlds, and the air hummed with excitement from 1,000 different voices. The alien leaders had spent weeks planning victory celebrations for their heroes. Each species prepared elaborate ceremonies to honor their special forces units. The Vortons had commissioned crystal statues of their elite warriors. The Granite people had carved monuments from living stone. The Pixel Collective had created holographic displays that told the story of each battle. But there was one mystery that still bothered everyone. Despite all their victories and successful missions, no one had ever actually seen a human special forces uniform. The humans had participated in every major battle and accomplished impossible missions, but their elite warriors remained invisible. Prince Vex stood at the podium, addressing the gathered crowd. His 4 eyes sparkled with health and gratitude as he spoke about his rescue from the robot prison. The entire galaxy owes a debt to the brave warriors who fought in this war, he said in his musical voice. Each species contributed their finest soldiers to our cause. He gestured toward the section where the human delegation sat. They wore the same simple gray uniforms that had become familiar to everyone during the war months. General Kang sat in the front row, looking calm and relaxed. His uniform showed no special decorations or rank insignia beyond the basic symbols of his position. But we must give special recognition to the mysterious human special forces, Prince Vex continued. Their achievements during this war were legendary. They penetrated impregnable fortresses, rescued prisoners from secure facilities, and defeated enemies that our best technology could not touch. The crowd murmured in agreement. Everyone had heard stories about the incredible human operations, the capture of the robot leader on planet Zarian, the destruction of the underground factory on Thane, rescue from the prison ship that had seemed impossible, all accomplished by human soldiers who looked completely ordinary yet. Throughout this entire war, Prince Vex paused and looked directly at General Kane. No one has ever seen what a human special forces uniform actually looks like. We have seen their results, but never their distinctive gear. We know their capabilities, but not their appearance. The alien audience leaned forward in anticipation. This had been a source of speculation and curiosity. For months, every species had distinctive uniforms for their elite units. Special colors, unique symbols, advanced equipment that marked warriors as members of elite formations. But the humans had never revealed their commander, Rock of the Granite. Forces stood up slowly. His massive stone body towered over everyone else in the hall. When he spoke, his voice rumbled like distant thunder. We have all shared our most sacred military traditions with our allies. We have revealed secrets that were guarded for thousands of years. His rocky features turned toward the human section. But our human friends have remained silent about their special forces. We respect their desire for secrecy, but the war is over now. Surely they can reveal their elite uniforms to celebrate our victory together. Colonel Sparkle of the Pixel Military floated higher in the air, her tiny voice somehow carrying throughout the entire hall. Our databases contain detailed information about every military unit in the galaxy. Except human special forces, we have images of their regular soldiers, but no records of their elite formations. More voices joined the discussion, alien commanders from dozens of species, all expressing the same curiosity. They had fought alongside humans for months. They had witnessed incredible feats of skill and courage, but they had never identified which humans were the special forces operatives. The questions continued for several minutes, until General Kang slowly rose from his seat. The hall fell completely silent as every eye turned toward him. His weathered face showed the strain of leading humanity through its first galactic war. His simple uniform looked even more plain, surrounded by all the elaborate alien military dress. "You want to see our Special Forces uniform?" he asked quietly. His voice carried easily through the silent hall, despite speaking barely above a whisper. "Very well, I will show it to you." He gestured toward his own clothing. "This is it," he said simply. "This plain gray uniform with basic rank insignia and standard equipment. This is what every human Special Forces operative wears." Alien audience looked confused. They stared at Kang's uniform, trying to see hidden features or special properties, but it appeared to be exactly the same as every other human uniform in the room. Simple gray fabric, basic design, no decorations. Except necessary rank symbols. Chief Scientist Pix, who had been rescued from the robot prison, spoke up from her floating platform. "But General Kang, that is the same uniform worn by every human soldier we have seen. How can your Special Forces and regular troops wear identical clothing?" Kang smiled and walked to the large window that looked out over the space station below them. Thousands of people moved through the corridors. Some were aliens in elaborate dress. Others were humans in simple gray uniforms, all going about their daily business. "That is exactly the point," he said, turning back to face the crowd. "The uniform is not what makes them special. Any human can become Special Forces. The farmer who joins the army, the student who enlists, the shop worker who volunteers to serve." He paused and looked around the room at all the confused alien faces. "We do not mark our elite warriors with special uniforms, because that would destroy their greatest advantage, their ability to blend in, to look ordinary, to be completely underestimated." Admiral Vex blinked his 4 eyes rapidly. "But how do you identify your Special Forces operatives? How do you know which soldiers have elite training and which are regular troops?" "We do not identify them," Kang replied calmly. "That is the whole point right now in this room. There are probably 20 human Special Forces operators. You have talked to them, shared meals with them, worked alongside them for months, but you cannot tell which ones they are." Aliens began looking around nervously at the human soldiers scattered throughout the hall. Every human looked exactly the same in their simple gray uniforms. Any one of them could be a legendary warrior who had infiltrated robot bases or rescued prisoners from secure facilities. Kang continued his explanation. "Other species create elite warriors who stand out, who look powerful and impressive, who inspire fear in their enemies. Humans create elite warriors who look like everyone else, who can walk through any crowd without being noticed." He pointed to a human soldier standing guard by the main entrance. The young woman looked completely ordinary with her standard equipment and regulation haircut, but she could be the operative who destroyed the robot factory, or someone who just finished basic training. Nobody can tell the difference. The alien commanders finally began to understand the true nature of human military strategy. While they had spent centuries developing advanced uniforms and distinctive gear to mark their elite units, humans had done the opposite. They had made their special forces invisible by making them look normal. Corporal Lee, who had been standing quietly near the back of the room, stepped forward. She wore the same gray uniform as everyone else and carried the same basic equipment. Her face was unremarkable, and her manner was calm and professional. "I was the one who captured the robot leader on Zarian," she said simply. "I spent 6 hours crawling through maintenance tunnels wearing this uniform. The robots ignored me because I looked like a maintenance worker private." Chun raised her hand from across the room. "I destroyed the underground factory on Thane," she announced matter-of-factly. "I walked through their security systems for 8 hours, carrying basic tools. The robots never suspected that someone in such ordinary clothes could be a threat." One by one, more humans identified themselves as the operatives who had conducted the war, most daring missions. The soldier who had rescued Prince Vex, the team that had disabled the robot fleet communications, individuals who had sabotaged enemy supply lines. All of them looked exactly like regular troops. The alien audience sat in stunned silence as they realized they had been surrounded by some of the galaxy's most dangerous warriors for months without knowing it. The humans had hidden their elite forces in plain sight, using the most perfect disguise possible, looking completely normal. "That is why no one has ever seen a human special forces uniform," General Kang concluded, "because the moment you can identify them, they stop being special forces. Their power comes from being invisible, from looking ordinary, from being underestimated by their enemies." Gestured toward all the humans in the room. "Every person wearing this uniform is potentially a special forces operative. You will never know which ones unless they choose to reveal themselves. And they will only do that when their mission is complete." The victory celebration continued. But the atmosphere had changed. The alien leaders looked at their human allies with new respect and understanding. They realized they had witnessed the most sophisticated military deception in galactic history. Captain Lee stepped through the massive doors of the meeting room aboard the space station. Unity 7. The room was bigger than a football field, with walls made of clear glass that showed the stars. Outside, dozens of alien species filled the room, each group wearing their finest military uniforms and displaying their most advanced weapons. The Vorten commanders stood near the front of the room. Their blue skin glowed softly in the dim light, and their 4 eyes moved, constantly scanning everyone around them. They wore battlesuits that sparkled like diamonds, with energy shields that hummed quietly around their bodies. Their weapons floated beside them without any hands holding them up. The suits were covered in medals and symbols that told everyone how many battles they had won. Across from them, the granite people formed a solid wall of gray stone. Their bodies looked like living rocks, and they stood perfectly still, like ancient statues. Each one wore armor made from metal that could stop any laser beam or plasma blast. Their suits were so heavy that the floor shook slightly when they moved. The armor had scratches and burn marks that showed how many fights they had survived. Each scratch was like a badge of honor in the corner. Near the big windows, the pixel aliens floated in the air inside their glowing tech suits. These tiny beings were no bigger than human children, but their technology was more advanced than anything else in the galaxy. Their suits were made of pure light that changed colors constantly. The suits let them fly through space without ships and turn invisible whenever they wanted. Small robots floated around each pixel, carrying weapons that could destroy entire buildings. Near the center of the room, the Zephyr warriors stood in formation. Their tall, thin bodies were covered in flowing robes that moved like water, even though there was no wind. The robes were woven with threads that sparkled like stars, and each thread contained nanocomputers that could hack into any system. Their weapons were long staffs that could stretch and bend like snakes. The crystalline delegates sat on chairs made of pure crystal that they had grown themselves. Their bodies looked like living jewels that caught the light and threw rainbows across the room. Their military gear was made from the same crystal as their bodies, but it was harder than any metal known to science. The crystal could absorb energy attacks and shoot them back at enemies. Captain Lee walked slowly through all these impressive displays. His gray uniform looked very plain compared to all the fancy alien gear. He wore no special armor, no glowing weapons, no floating devices. The only thing that marked him as an officer was a small patch on his shoulder with his rank. Nothing else made him stand out from any other human soldier. Commander Park sat at a simple metal table near the back of the room. He wore the same gray uniform as Lee with the same basic equipment belt and the same standard issue boots. His hair was cut short and neat, and he had no special markings or decorations that showed he was important. The only thing on his table was a basic tablet computer that looked ancient compared to the alien technology. Around him, the meeting had been going on for 3 hours already. Each alien species had shown off their special forces units. The Vortons had displayed holographic videos of their elite warriors destroying robot armies with ease. Their special forces wore suits that cost more than entire human cities, and each warrior had abilities that seemed almost magical. The granite people had brought actual pieces of their special armor for everyone to touch. The metal was so strong that laser beams just bounced off it harmlessly. Their special forces could walk through explosions without getting hurt and lift heavy vehicles with their bare hands. The armor made them look like ancient gods of war. The pixel aliens had demonstrated their invisibility technology by making one of their warriors completely disappear. The tiny soldier had walked around the room for 10 minutes without anyone seeing him until he chose to become visible again. Their special forces could sneak into any building anywhere in the galaxy without being detected. Each species had spent long minutes explaining why their special forces were the best in the galaxy. They talked about special training that took decades to complete. They showed weapons that could level mountains and armor that could survive inside stars. They presented soldiers who had genetic modifications that made them stronger, faster, and smarter than normal members of their species. When it came time for the humans to present their special forces, Captain Lee had simply stood up and said they were ready to fight. No demonstration, no fancy equipment, no special presentation. Just a simple statement that Earth was prepared to join the war against the robot armies. Now the alien commanders were getting impatient. The war against the mechanical invaders was getting worse. Every day, more planets were falling to the robot armies, and everyone needed to work together to survive. But how could they trust humans who would not even show their best warriors? The Vorton leader, whose name was difficult for humans to pronounce, raised one of his forearms. The room became quiet, and all eyes turned toward him. His voice was deep and musical, like singing crystal when he spoke. "You have all seen our finest warriors," he said slowly. "Each of us has shared our most precious military secrets. We have shown you technology that took thousands of years to develop. We have revealed tactics that we normally keep hidden from our enemies." He paused, and his 4 eyes all focused on Commander Park, sitting calmly at his simple table. But the humans remained silent. "They have not shown us their special forces. They have not demonstrated their advanced weapons. They have not revealed their secret tactics. How can we plan a proper battle strategy when we do not know what Earth brings to this fight?" The other alien commanders began to nod and make agreeing sounds. The granite leader stepped forward, making the floor shake under his massive weight. His rocky voice rumbled like an earthquake when he spoke. "We understand that some military information must be kept secret, but we have all shared our most important capabilities with each other. Trust is essential in warfare. We must know what each ally can contribute." The pixel leader floated higher in the air, her tiny voice somehow carrying across the entire room. Despite being barely louder than a whisper, perhaps the humans are embarrassed because their technology is not as advanced as ours. Many younger species have this problem. We would not judge Earth for having simpler equipment. More alien voices joined in. Some were concerned, some were suspicious, and some were just curious. They all wanted to know why humans were being so secretive about their military capabilities. The robot threat was too serious for allies to hide important information from each other. Commander Park listened to all the questions and complaints with a calm expression on his face. He did not look worried or embarrassed or angry. He just sat quietly until the room became silent again, waiting for his response. Finally, he stood up slowly and looked around the room at all the impressive alien warriors and their amazing technology. He smiled, a small, peaceful smile that seemed strange in a room full of weapons and battle gear. "They are already here," he said in a quiet voice that somehow everyone could hear perfectly. The alien commanders looked around the room. Quickly, their advanced sensors scanned every corner looking for hidden human warriors. They checked for invisible soldiers cloaked in stealth technology. They searched for weapons that might be disguised as ordinary objects. They found nothing except regular human soldiers in basic gray uniforms. The Vorten leader blinked all four eyes in confusion, where he asked, "Are your special forces invisible like the Pixel warriors? Are they hiding in another dimension? Are they so small we cannot see them?" Park shook his head, still smiling. "That is exactly the point," he said simply. The aliens looked at each other with growing confusion. They had expected to see soldiers in powered armor, or warriors with genetic enhancements, or at least troops with weapons more advanced than basic human technology. Instead, they saw ordinary people in plain uniforms, carrying standard equipment. But as the meeting continued and battle plans were discussed, none of the aliens noticed the human soldier standing guard by the door, or the maintenance worker checking air vents, or the communications officer updating star charts. All these humans looked completely normal and unremarkable. None of the alien commanders realized they were looking directly at some of the most dangerous warriors in the galaxy.